And I said, listen, there's no way I'm going to pay you $12,500 for a salvage title E30 M3 shell. Hey guys, so if you follow me on Instagram, you know that I just drove across country 26 hours and 1,400 miles to buy what I thought was my dream race car. You know, it was an E30 M3 that was essentially ready to race with a few minor quirks and kinks that I knew about. When I got there, it's basically not what I expected, and I got back in my car and went right back home. So there are definitely things that I should have done, and in hindsight, and next time I'm going to be buying a car, that's what I'm going to do. So I just want to give you a few tips and a few things that you can do if you'd like to buy a car across country. There are a few other avenues, but first I'm going to give you a backstory about this E30 M3 that I really wanted to buy. So this journey started on December 13th when I was looking at classifieds for race cars on racingjunk.com. I located an E30 M3 on there. It was an 88. And it did need quite a bit of things to get it running. It looked like it was in really poor shape, and the description pretty much said that. The description was very limited. I did see salvage title. The owner did state that the car needed a lot of work, and from the photos, from the few photos that were on there, you can see that it did. You know, the fenders were hit, they were crunched in, the door on the passenger side was a little bit dented. Side skirt was coming off, the engine bay was covered in dust, and it just looked really dirty, and it's exactly what you'd expect from a $15,000 car. I get in touch with the owner, and he tells me that the car was last running a year ago. And essentially it needs fuel to be taken out of the tank needs to be cleaned, and he sees it running since it was just running a year ago. So I'm in New Jersey, he's in Indianapolis, and you know, we're separated by 700 miles. I can't just go there, make him a cash offer. So we get on the phone and I say, hey, listen, I want the car. I'll give you $12,500 for it. Just hold it for me until after the holidays. You know, so I'm available on the 26th. I'll drive up on the 26th after I get off of work on the 25th. We go over the car. He tells me about the history of it, who he worked for. You know, so he tells me how he has a racetrack business and everything seems legit, all the various car companies that he works for. And I'm like, all right, well, this guy definitely knows about the car. And, you know, I know that it's a salvage title E30 M3, but, you know, I didn't care about that. I'm fine with slapping a coat of paint, or not even, just leaving the fenders rusty as they are, as long as there was no rot. You know, I don't want to deal with rot. I'm dealing with that on the E9. So I had said to him, I said, listen, is there any rot on the car, any holes? He said no. So I said, you know, great. It's essentially minor mechanical fixes, you know, cleaning the tank, maybe changing the fuel lines, hasn't ran in a year. Essentially wouldn't need a full rebuild, and it's possibly fixable and ready to run. You know, he tells me Turner competition shifter, Turner suspension, competition suspension, so I'm excited. So I convinced my wife to drive down to Indianapolis with me. We wake up at 4 in the morning and we go through all these states, and it is the most tedious drive ever. But we're looking at the silver lining at the end, the light at the end of the tunnel, the E30 M3 that I've always wanted. So we arrive around maybe 4:40 p.m. after we had left our house at 4:30 a.m. So just about 10 hours. And I see it, it's sitting right as it said in the ad, you know, sitting in this guy's driveway. So he comes out, and, you know, I like to start with, tell me about the car again. You know, make sure all my ducks are in a row, everything's in order. As I'm looking over the car, now I've got my flashlight, and I'm looking at the car, and he's telling me, he's like, oh yeah, the car was last ran 4 years ago. I'm like, whoa, you know, my heart sinks. I'm like, listen, what do you mean? What do you mean 4 years ago? You know, you said the car was running last year. So he's telling me that the car was moved in the driveway, AKA running, AKA was pushed. Like, running doesn't mean pushed out of the driveway. So I'm like, wow, like is this just basically a shell? So I do what I can. I take a look at the undercarriage of the car. You know, I'm trying to focus on that aspect. You know, maybe he understands, but I want to see what are the other problems, what are the other issues with this car. The frame rails are solid, you know, as he said. The dents are just, you know, the photos don't do it justice. I mean, obviously I knew what I was what I was walking into, and I knew what the car was, but essentially I knew that this car needed a lot more than just fuel lines and a fuel tank. He hooked a battery up to it. He said, oh, maybe the battery is dead. Turned the key, no lights on the dash. I'm assuming the car needed electrical work because I look down on the ground and I see the computer from the car laying there. Wires were messed up, the glove box was smashed down. Yeah, the car had a roll cage, but there was a hole in the roof. And it really was such an ugly sight that, you know, it reminds me, I'm sitting in the car, in the seat, trying to check the gears out, you know. I know the car's not on, but I want to see if it even goes into gear. Fourth gear, it just stopped like right at the top as I'm trying to get into fourth. So I knew the trans was busted. This guy's basically has me by the throat saying, hey, listen, you're down here, and I have no room for negotiation. I have no leg to stand on. So last night I had finished filming, and when I started editing everything late at night, I realized that I was out of memory. So back at it again. I'm just gonna cut to the chase. Essentially, the final part of the story is, you know, as I'm telling him that, hey man, you told me that the car essentially just needed a fuel tank cleanup and to be cleaned out. Of course, he denied it all. His wife is standing next to him and she says, no, like, hey, I remember you telling him that over the phone. I was there during the conversation. So, you know, I wasn't the only one that was kind of like, hey man, like, you were wrong and you definitely led me astray here. So you wasted my time, my wife's time, and a lot of money in gas. You know, it was only $300, granted, but still, it's like, you know, for nothing. 26 hours. So I wanted to give you guys a little bit of information about what I learned when buying a car from another state. The forums and online social media, there's a huge car community out there. So if you ever need any help or information, I would recommend reaching out to somebody in Indianapolis saying, hey, for example, going Rev Limited, something I should have done, and said, hey, is anybody in Indianapolis that can go possibly look at this car, you know, Venmo them or PayPal them? Or sometimes people are just willing to do this, you know, for free, just so that maybe if there's a car they're interested in New Jersey, they would do it for, you do it for them. So reach out to social media, see if anybody is in the area that could possibly help you out. The second thing is really get the story down. Get your own Carfax. Keep kind of asking these questions, although they may be repetitive and some sellers won't really want to put up with it. You will see what kind of truths are going to keep going out throughout those stories. If you want, jot notes, see what they tell you, see if everything is in the same line of what you've been hearing from the seller the entire time. Also something great to know. Number 3, Google. Use Google. Google the stickers on the car. If it has a vinyl wrap, Google some sort of definitions or some sort of description of the car. Google the VIN number, the seller, see if everything's legit, because it's something that I should have done and I did. So what I found was a thread on Rev Limited about the seller, that the seller posted on Rev Limited, and basically throughout the comments it appears that the car was, you know, just as advertised. Needed minor stuff, and a few people had commented and said, you know, this is a pretty good buy for 15,000. So it might lead you astray, but it might provide some information. You know, anytime you read comments, just to get what other people think, maybe other people have had experiences with that vehicle or with that seller. So it's also good to know what other experiences people have had. Number 4 is know the market, know that you're actually getting into something good. You know, for the price point, you know what the prices are. You can always check on Bring a Trailer, check what cars are sold for, check online, check other auctions. That way, you know, you're not going to get burned in the end if you ever choose to sell the car. You know, again, I knew that this car was a salvage title, but there were so many things that were wrong with it. The doors were busted, both sides. The fenders were ripped, dented. The front bumper was hanging on by zip ties. The side skirt was getting pulled off to the side. And again, these are things that I knew appearance-wise, because essentially if you're buying a track car, as long as everything's put together, it's okay if it has a dent in it. But the totality, the circumstance with the engine, the trans, the rot, the fenders, it just wasn't worth it. I mean, I'm sure he's gonna sell it to somebody who has more money than experience, or more money than knowledge, where they have their own shop and they have their own body guys do it, and you know, get the car sold. It's gonna happen. It's not that it was a crazy price, but you know, as soon as I get down there and I'm trying to negotiate, I was offering him $8,000. He said, no, I have somebody who's gonna buy the car for 15. No questions asked. We'll ship it overseas. You know, my question to that is, why would you drive me out there? Why would you tell me to come by and say you're gonna pull the car for me if I'm giving you $12,500, but you can sell it for 15? Also, another thing to know, I guess that's number 5. At the end of the day, there are other cars probably locally. It might take you a while. It might, you know, keep looking at Marketplace, keep looking at Craigslist and all these other websites, other classifieds, because if you really want something, I'm sure it'll pop up. So yes, sometimes you do have to travel. You can do that, which brings me to point number 6. If it's far, get some price quotes about trailering the car. Transporting the car from any kind of reputable auto transporter. I couldn't fly out there because the dates that I had available to fly out, the tickets were $500 each. So by the time I get to the airport, fly out, rent a car to go down there, maybe the seller might pick me up, who knows, you know, you could save yourself a lot of time. Essentially the flight is only 4 hours, but it's always something to look into. Flying out, getting the car yourself, and maybe renting a car, pulling it back, and transporting it. So I hope you learned something. Definitely learned from my mistakes. I took a big L right at the end of 2019. So hopefully 2020, I don't make the same mistakes. If there's anything that I missed, I'm sure that I missed something about buying a car out of state or a far distance away, maybe even if it's on the other side of the state. Let me know in the comments below. You know, give it a thumbs up if you learned something, if you liked the video, if you want me to keep making videos. Let me know in the comments. Subscribe, hit the like button. I'm gonna be getting back into the 944. I bought some calipers for that, so I'll be changing the brakes, doing some work on that, and then once the weather starts getting nicer, I'm gonna pull the 911 out and do a full video of that, because I've only just been posting some photos on Instagram. So thank you guys. I'll see you on the next video.